President Buhari legalizes June 12 as Democracy Day. Ahmed Lawan is Senate President. Ovie Omo-Agege is Deputy in the 9th Assembly. In international news, helicopter crash on top of a Manhattan office building kills pilot. And in sport, Falcons arrive in Grenoble ahead of Wednesday's crash with Korea.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Senator Ahmed Lawan, representing Yobe North, has been elected Senate President of the 9th Senate, defeating his closest contestant, Senator Ali Ndume. When vote counting was completed, Lawan received 79 votes against Ndume's 28. Senator Ovie Omo-Agege of Delta State has also emerged Deputy Senate President, polling 68 votes to defeat his rival and immediate past Deputy Senate President, Ike Ekweremadu.
It is my pleasure to announce that Senator-elect Ahmed Ibrahim Lawan, having scored the highest vote of the total number of votes cast, is hereby returned as duly elected President of the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
I, Ahmed Ibrahim Lawan,
do solemnly affirm
that
I will be faithful
and
bear true allegiance
to
the Federal Republic of Nigeria,
and
that I will preserve, protect and defend the Constitution
of
the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So help me God.
June the 12th is now officially Democracy Day in Nigeria as President Muhammadu Buhari signed into law the public holiday bill, making June the 12th a public holiday in the country. The law reserves May 29 as the handover and inauguration day for new governments in the country. The Senate and the House of Representatives recently passed the amendments bill. The president had decided to honor the presumed winner of the presidential election of June the 12th, 1993, late Chief Moshood Abiola. This is in recognition of the sacrifices made for democracy by the late philanthropist. The president also posthumously bestowed on him the country's highest title, Grand Commander of the Federal Republic. The Lagos State government has taken over prosecution of dismissed Inspector Olalekun Ogunyemi, who is accused of killing a football enthusiast, Kolade Johnson, in March. Ogunyemi will now be tried at the High Court following the recommendation of the Directorate of Public Prosecutions. He has been in prison since April, following his remand by the Butemeta Magistrate Court pending the DPP's advice. Ogunyemi will be prosecuted in accordance with Section 223 of the 2015 Criminal Law of Lagos State. The Independent National Electoral Commission is meeting today to study the court rulings on issuance of a certificate of return to Igbo State former Governor Rochas Okorocha. In a ruling, Federal High Court Justice Okon Abang had earlier directed INEC to issue a certificate of return to Okorocha as the senator-elect for Imo West. In its response, the commission assured that a law-abiding institution, it will do the needful. The Presidential Election Petition Tribunal has resumed sitting 19 days after its last adjournment with the presiding justice of the Lagos Division of the Court of Appeal, Mohammed Lawal Garba, as new chairman. The pioneer chair and president of the Court of Appeal, Justice Zainab Bukachua, had recused herself from the panel following a petition by former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, alleging likelihood of bias against him and his People's Democratic Party on accounts of the judge being married to an All Progressives Congress chieftain. During the resumption of proceedings to hear Atiku's petitions, PDP and others challenging Buhari's return as winner of the exercise by the Independent National Electoral Commission, Justice Garba pledged fairness to all parties and sought the full cooperation of the legitimating Council for Expeditious Treatment. This next story proves that when the will and bright ideas are present, no one is too young to run. The new Speaker of Plateau State House of Assembly is a 500-level law student at the University of Jos and a fresh member representing Jos East constituency in the Plateau State House of Assembly. 34-year-old Abok Nuhu was elected Speaker of the State Assembly yesterday, while the immediate past Deputy Speaker, Saleh Yipmong, representing Dengue constituency, was returned. In Oyo State as well, members of the State House of Assembly unanimously elected as Speaker of the House on Monday, 31-year-old Debo Ogundoyin, lawmaker from Ibarapa East constituency. Ogundoyin was first elected into the Assembly in 2018 after the death of the Speaker of the Assembly, Michael Adeyemi from Ibarapa East. Coincidentally, the new Speaker is from late Speaker's constituency and also doubles as a son of the late industrialist Adeseun Ogundoyin from Eruwa, Ibarapa area of the state. Coming up, African news. 95 dead in latest massacre in Mali. And later, international stories. Helicopter crash on top of a Manhattan office building kills pilot.
You are watching ANN. Somewhere in the world, every second of the day, news is happening. And of course, Nigeria is bustling with news day and night. That is why ANN doesn't sleep. Our eyes are peeled, wide open, so no story escapes our radar. We stay abreast of world events and happenings at home. We keep you up to the minute in the world of sports. We give you information to stay on top of your investments and all the hard facts you need to navigate your day. If you miss us on air, you can keep up to date on our website, annafrica.net, and on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. We are ANN, Africa News Network. We do news right in a truly African spirit. Shining our eyes on breaking news, whether in the east or in the west, with Al-Shabaab in Somalia and Boko Haram in Nigeria, with turbulence in the north and agitation in the south. Wherever you live in Nigeria, wherever news happens in Africa, we've got it covered. ANN News, connecting Africans in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to African stories. UN Secretary General Associate Spokeswoman Eric Kaneko has reacted to the massacre in Mali. The UN mission in Mali had reported on Monday that at least 95 persons were killed and many others wounded in a deadly attack in central parts of the country. Reports say armed men led the attack in the village of Subunuku in the Mopti region. Speaking to reporters in New York City, Kaneko said the UN mission in Mali is coordinating its response in support of Malian authorities, and the United Nations system in the nation is mobilizing to provide humanitarian assistance to help people affected.
Armed men led an attack that left at least 95 people dead and many others wounded. The mission is coordinating its response in support of Malian authorities, and the United Nations system in Mali is mobilizing to provide humanitarian assistance to help people affected. The mission also provided air support this morning in support of the Malian government to prevent further attacks.
Keita, who has been attending a conference in Switzerland, says has cut short his trip following the attack. Boubacar Keita condemned the attack and said nothing could justify it. He urged Malians to come together and called on what he called people's sense of responsibility and citizenship in not taking the violence further. A charity organization in Nairobi is helping struggling families to find resources to help raise their children in an effort to keep more children off the streets as the number of homeless families rises rapidly each year. Homeless children on Nairobi streets make up a significant fraction in Kenya. Some end up in prison because of crime. Others die young on the streets, but few find salvation through Good Samaritans. Children's homes serve an important function in taking children off the street. Rescue Center, Better Day Center for Children is one organization that believes the ideal situation is for children to remain with their families. The center is trying to help the families stay together.
In the African culture, the child is not meant to be for one person. Even if the uncle has died, even if the father has died, let the child be brought in the African family and transmit the African values.
Parents are trained in income-generating activities. They make soap and ornaments which they sell while their children are at the rescue centers. Nairobi City Council has begun taking these children to rehabilitation centers. Kenya Family Charities enrolls about 30,000 children in day centers every year. Somalia has seen its share of terror and violence for many years, and there seems to be no end in sight. Internal terror groups and international sponsors of terrorism have all operated in the country, causing untold chaos, death and destruction of property. The government has been active in efforts to curb the violence and carnage that have dogged many parts of the country, but an expert says more needs to be done. Abdulaziz Bilo reports.
The U.S. military has stepped up attacks against pro-Islamic State affiliates and Al-Shabaab militants in northern Somalia, with 6 strikes conducted this month in the mountainous region of Puntland, northeast of the country. Close to a dozen militants have been neutralized near the Golis Mountains, where the 2 rival factions are battling for control. U.S. officials say that the strikes are vital and have contained both groups from expanding territorial control in the autonomous region. Hussein Sheikh Ali is a security expert and leads an institute that is analyzing ISIL's increasing footprint in Africa. He argues that the strikes have been effective, but more must be done.
Somewhat contained as far as the usual raids and attacks that they were conducting on the ground. They're still doing it, but in a very limited scope right now, so it seems their strikes have significantly slowed down. The forces on the ground, who are the Somalis and the AMISOM, should be making more advances on the ground.
The pro-ISIL faction is estimated to have less than 200 fighters, mostly former Al-Shabaab combatants who shifted allegiance.
IS Somalia has been very small and also very insignificant in impact on the ground. They have the appeal, global appeal, and also they have been trying to change and make inroads within the Al-Shabaab fighters, who were the most of their fighters originally came from. But they now seem to be constrained, and Shabaab have pushed back.
The 2 rival factions here in Somalia have clashed on several occasions in a move experts here say is a fight for financial resources. Their main targets include big corporations, from which they impose hefty taxes to sustain their operations. For now, neither group is winning, but it's civilians and the business community that continues to suffer in the ongoing insurgency campaign. Meanwhile, authorities hope to secure the nation and defeat militant groups, denying them a chance to establish a safe haven in the Horn of Africa.
When we return, international news. Helicopter crash on top of Manhattan office building kills pilot. And later, sport. Falcons arrive in Grenoble for Korea clash.
You are watching ANN.
the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow this story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. On the foreign scene, a pilot was killed on Monday in New York City when his helicopter crashed onto the rooftop of a Manhattan skyscraper. The crash jolted the city heart is still unnerved by the memories of the September 11, 2001 airplane attacks in the World Trade Center. The crash on the rainy gray day atop the 54-story building forced office workers to evacuate in one of the city's busiest areas, a few blocks north of Times Square. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio told the news conference the pilot was the only person on board the chopper when it plunged into the building and burst into flames. He also said no one in the building or on the ground was injured. The crash site is about half a mile from Trump Tower, where U.S. President Donald Trump maintains an apartment. A host of candidates to replace Theresa May as British Prime Minister has launched campaigns on Monday, promising to solve the turmoil of Brexit and taking shot at front-runner Boris Johnson. May stepped down as leader of the ruling party on Friday, having failed to win Parliament's support for a European Union divorce deal that was supposed to steer the country smoothly out of the bloc and deal with Britain's biggest political crisis in a generation. Conservative lawmakers will hold their first round of voting on Thursday to begin narrowing the field of 10 candidates. All candidates have set out their domestic agenda as they launched the public campaigns on Monday, but it was Brexit that dominated. Nearly all the hopefuls promised they could solve the Brexit mess within 3 months. Theresa May was not able to achieve that in 3 years of EU talks. Current UK exit date from the EU is the last day of October this year. And all seems quiet on the Venezuelan front, but that is because there are other major stories around the world that have eclipsed the country's economic and political situation, which have not changed. In the midst of it all, Venezuelans are struggling to overcome hardships brought on by the political unrest there.
Venezuela, a country in crisis. Millions have fled the economic collapse. The government and the opposition are at each other's throats. We wanted to get a snapshot of the country at this moment in time. As we travel through towns, we notice how many stores are closed. We stop by a hairdresser's. Johan Ascanio owns this shop. He says since the escalation of the political and economic tension, business has collapsed.
This is down by 80% because of the situation in the country. We survive with the few clients who still come. Every day prices rise and we can't keep our business on track.
He was preparing to close for the day when a client entered. Fatima Pimentel says many of her friends can't afford the beauty salon, needing to spend the money on what food there is. Still, a trip here can be therapeutic in stressful times. Venezuelans are polarized. In the middle of the polarization, there are millions of so-called ninis, those not convinced by the government or the opposition. Janet Salazar is one of them. She and her husband have been cattle ranching for years, but with the meat market slowing down, they decided to invest in a coffee processing plant that had been shut down 5 years ago. She says that given the current challenges, Venezuelans have to constantly look for opportunities.
This situation has led us to search for new ways to survive, to keep going, to produce. Life is about working. We're passing through a critical time, but I have faith in Venezuelans. We'll get through this.
Food shortages have people trying to grow their own supplies. Aurelini Macari started this urban farm for people in her neighborhood. Here she grows vegetables and raises animals and fish. She supported the late President Hugo Chavez and sees this urban farm as part of his legacy to feed poor Venezuelans and make the country more productive.
My objective in this revolution is to continue fighting for a better world. a humanity with more tolerance.
Venezuela is at a crossroads. The present situation is unsustainable, but what comes next is anyone's guess.
And just a day after one of the largest protests in Hong Kong since its handover from British rule in 1997, Chief Executive Carrie Lam vowed on Monday to push ahead with amendments to laws allowing suspects to be extradited to mainland China. The protests plunged Hong Kong into political crisis just as months of pro-democracy Occupy demonstrations did in 2014, heaping pressure on Lam's administration in her official brackets in Beijing. Chants echoed through the high-rise city streets on Sunday, calling on her to quit. Britain handed Hong Kong back to China under a one country, two systems formula, with guarantees that its autonomy and freedoms, including an independent justice system, would be protected. For many accused China of extensive meddling in many sectors, denying democratic reforms and squeezing freedoms, interfering with local elections. Organizers put the size of Sunday's crowd at more than 1 million, outstripping a demonstration in 2003 when 500,000 took to the street to challenge government plans for tighter national security laws. Up next, sport. Falcons arrive in Grenoble for Korea clash. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN. Shining our eyes on breaking news, whether in the east or in the west, with Al-Shabaab in Somalia and Boko Haram in Nigeria, with turbulence in the north and agitation in the south. Wherever you live in Nigeria, wherever news happens in Africa, we've got it covered. ANN News, connecting Africans in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News in Sport. The Super Falcons have arrived in Grenoble ahead of Wednesday's crucial Women's World Cup clash with the Republic of Korea. They have also been encouraged by top officials of the Nigeria Football Federation to put behind them the loss to the Norwegians and plot a winning strategy for Wednesday. And we hope for their success this time around. President of the Athletics Federation of Nigeria, Ibrahim Guza, says he's ready for investigation over the missing $135,000 IAAF money. World Athletics body had mistakenly paid $150,000 to the AFN in 2017 instead of $15,000 and later sought a refund when the officials of the body realized it overpaid by $135,000. Guza debunked allegations that he was evading investigation, saying both the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission and the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission have been invited to investigate the controversies surrounding the missing money. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other stories, visit our social media platforms and join the conversation on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatuji. Have a pleasant evening.